What happens when one of country music's biggest stars walks onto a morning show set and refuses to play nice? What we witnessed wasn't your typical celebrity interview gone slightly awkward. This was a full-scale collision between two massive personalities, broadcast live to millions of viewers who couldn't believe what they were seeing. Faith Hill, known for her Southern charm and polished public image, showed a side of herself that morning that nobody expected. And Michael Strahan, usually the king of keeping things light and breezy, found himself in a situation where his famous smile couldn't save him. Before we get into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think really caused this blow-up. Now, let's dive into how a simple morning interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. The segment was supposed to be straightforward. Faith Hill was there to promote her new album, talk about her upcoming tour, maybe share some stories about life with Tim McGrath. Standard stuff for Good Morning America, the kind of interview that usually goes smooth as butter. Michael Strahan was in his usual seat, coffee mug in hand, ready to charm another guest with his easygoing style that made him a favorite among viewers and celebrities alike. But from the moment Faith Hill walked onto that set, something felt different. The usual warmth that guests bring, that excited energy about being on national television, it wasn't there. Her smile looked tight. Her posture was rigid. Michael stood up to greet her like he does with every guest, extending his hand with that signature gap-toothed grin that usually melts any tension in the room. Faith shook his hand, but barely made eye contact. She sat down in the guest chair, adjusted her microphone pack, and stared straight ahead at the cameras. Michael settled back into his seat, clearly sensing something was off, but doing what any professional would do, pushing forward with a plan. Faith Hill, "Welcome to Good Morning America," Michael said, his voice carrying that enthusiasm that made millions of people start their day with him. "It is so great to have you here. I've been a fan for years, and I have to say, this new album is incredible." Faith nodded once. "Thank you." That was it. Just thank you. No elaboration, no matching his energy, no playing the game that every celebrity knows they're supposed to play when they sit down for a promotional interview. Michael's smile flickered, for just a second. So brief that if you blinked, you might have missed it, but it was there. He pressed on. "So, let's talk about this album." Michael continued, leaning forward slightly like he was sharing a secret with her and the millions watching. "You took 3 years between this one and your last release. That's a long time in the music industry. What made you want to take that step back?" Faith looked at him directly for the first time since sitting down. "I didn't take a step back. I was living my life. Creating art isn't about churning out product on someone else's timeline." The words themselves weren't necessarily hostile, but the delivery was ice cold. Michael's co-hosts, sitting on the other side of the desk, exchanged quick glances. This wasn't the Faith Hill they'd seen in pre-inter, the one who'd been friendly and warm with the producers. "Absolutely, absolutely," Michael said, nodding like he completely understood, trying to smooth over the sudden chill in the air. And that time clearly paid off because the reviews have been outstanding. Critics are calling it your most personal work yet. There's one song in particular, track 7, that really caught my attention. It feels like there's a lot of raw emotion there. Can you talk about where that came from? "It came from my life," Faith said flatly. "From experiences, from being a woman in this industry for decades and dealing with people who think they know your story better than you do." Michael paused. The studio went quiet except for the low hum of cameras and equipment. "I'm not sure I follow. Are you saying that people misunderstand you?" "I'm saying that people, and I'm including media in this, have made a career out of speculating about my life, my marriage, my choices without actually knowing anything real. They create narratives that fit whatever story they want to tell that week." Michael sat back slightly. His expression shifted from friendly host to something more guarded. "Well, Faith, you have to understand that when you're as famous as you are, people are curious. They want to know about the person behind the music. That's not necessarily a bad thing." "Curious is one thing," Faith shot back, her voice getting sharper. "Invasive is another. Making up stories about my personal life to sell magazines or get clicks or boost ratings. That's not curiosity. That's exploitation."
"Hold on," Michael said.
And now there was an edge creeping into his voice, too. Nobody here is exploiting you. You came on this show to promote your album. We're giving you a platform to reach millions of people. That's what this is, a platform. Faith let out a short laugh that had no humor in it whatsoever. Is that what you call it when you bring people on here and ask them invasive questions about their private lives under the guise of friendly conversation? Michael's jaw tightened. I haven't asked you anything invasive. I asked you about your music and what inspired it. That's literally why you're here. You asked me about track 7, Faith said, leaning forward now, her eyes locked on his. You don't think I know what you were really asking? Everyone who listens to that song tries to connect it to my marriage, tries to find cracks that aren't there, tries to create drama where there isn't any. I was asking about the emotional depth of the song, Michael replied, his voice firm. Now, if you don't want to talk about what inspired your own music, then I'm genuinely confused about what you do want to talk about. I want people to listen to the music instead of treating it like a treasure map to my personal life. Faith said, every song I write doesn't need to be dissected like some kind of coded message about who I'm fighting with or whether my marriage is falling apart. Michael spread his hands. Faith, nobody said anything about your marriage falling apart. You're the one who brought that up. The silence that followed was deafening. Faith's face flushed. Michael stared at her, waiting. The cameras kept rolling because this was live television and there was nowhere to hide. Faith's expression hardened even more. You know exactly what you were implying with that question. Don't play innocent now. Michael shook his head slowly. I asked you about a song. You're the one who jumped to marriage and drama and all of that. I think maybe you're projecting something here.
Projecting?
Faith's voice rose slightly. I've been doing this long enough to know how these interviews work. You ask seemingly innocent questions that are designed to get me to reveal something personal, something you can turn into a headline. Then when I call it out, you act like I'm being difficult. You're being difficult, Michael said. And the bluntness of it clearly surprised even him based on the slight widening of his eyes after the words left his mouth. But he didn't back down. I'm sitting here trying to have a conversation with you about your music, which again is why you agreed to come on this show, and you're treating me like I'm some kind of tabloid reporter ambushing you on the street. Maybe that's because the line between legitimate media and tabloids got real blurry somewhere along the way. Faith countered. Shows like this one used to be about substance. Now it's all about getting viral moments and sound bites. Michael's co-host tried to jump in, her voice calm and measured. Faith, I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over and talk about the tour? I know your fans are really excited about now. Faith interrupted, not even looking at the co-host, keeping her eyes fixed on Michael. I want to finish this conversation. He wants to know what inspired my music. Fine, I'll tell him. It's inspired by decades of being treated like a commodity instead of an artist. It's inspired by people who think that because I'm successful, I somehow owe them access to every corner of my life. It's inspired by the constant pressure to be perfect, to smile through everything, to never show that any of this gets to you. Nobody's asking you to be perfect, Michael said. But you did come on a talk show, Faith. Talking is kind of the whole point. I came here to talk about my art, Faith said. Not to be psychoanalyzed or to feed into whatever narrative you've already decided to push. What narrative? Michael asked. And now he was genuinely raising his voice. You walked out here with an attitude from the start. I welcomed you, complimented your album, asked you a basic question about your creative process, and you came at me like I'd insulted your family. So maybe instead of accusing me of having some agenda, you should look at what you brought into this room. The crew behind the cameras was frozen. This was not how these segments went, ever. Good Morning America prided itself on being the safe, comfortable, family-friendly way to start your day. Celebrities came on, promoted their projects, shared some laughs, maybe a touching story, and everyone left happy. This was something else entirely. What I brought into this room, Faith said slowly, each word deliberate, is 30 years of experience dealing with people who smile to your face while trying to exploit you. So, forgive me if I'm not falling all over myself with gratitude for the opportunity to sit in this chair. Michael let out a long breath. You know what, Faith? I've interviewed hundreds of people in this chair. Actors, musicians, athletes, politicians, all kinds of folks. Some are having a bad day. Some are tired. Some are nervous. I get it. But I've never had someone come on here and be this openly hostile for no reason. No reason? Faith's voice was incredulous. You really don't see it, do you? You don't see how the entire structure of these interviews is designed to make the guest vulnerable while the host maintains all the power. You get to ask whatever you want. And if we don't answer exactly how you like, we're difficult. We're problematic. We're not playing the game right. It's not a game, Michael said firmly. It's a conversation. And in conversations, both people participate. They give and take. They meet each other halfway. You haven't given anything since you sat down except attitude and accusations. Because I'm tired of giving, Faith said, and for the first time, something other than anger crept into her voice. Something that might have been exhaustion or frustration or genuine pain. I'm tired of giving pieces of myself away to satisfy everyone else's curiosity or boost someone else's ratings or make someone else's job easier. At some point, don't I get to just be a person instead of a product? Michael's expression softened slightly just for a moment. Of course you do. But Faith, that's not what's happening here. You're turning this into something it's not. Am I? Faith challenged. Or are you so used to people playing along that you don't even recognize when someone pushes back? Maybe the problem isn't that I'm being difficult. Maybe the problem is that everyone else has been too easy. Michael opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. He looked down at his notes, then back up at Faith. Okay, you want to do this differently? Let's do it differently. No more questions about the music or what inspired it. Let's talk about this right here, right now. Why did you come on this show today if you have such a problem with how these things work? Faith didn't hesitate. Because my record label wanted me to. Because it's part of the promotional cycle that's expected. Because if I don't do interviews, then I'm being reclusive and people speculate about what I'm hiding. It's all part of the machine. Michael, you know that as well as I do. So, you're here against your will? Michael asked. Is that what you're saying? I'm saying that choice is complicated when your career depends on it, Faith replied. I'm saying that there's pressure from every direction to show up and perform and be the version of myself that everyone expects, regardless of how I actually feel. Then tell me how you actually feel, Michael said, leaning forward again. Right now, no music, no promotion, no machine, just you and me having a real conversation.
How are you? Feeling?
Faith stared at him for a long moment. The tension in the studio was suffocating. I feel like I'm constantly fighting to maintain some sense of authenticity in an industry that rewards performance over honesty. I feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough, and it's always too much at the same time. I feel like I'm expected to be grateful for opportunities while also being criticized for taking them. Does that answer your question? It does, Michael said quietly. And I appreciate you being honest about it. But Faith, you have to understand I'm not your enemy here. I'm not trying to tear you down or exploit you. I'm literally just trying to do my job, which is to have interesting conversations with interesting people. Your job relies on people like me being willing to expose ourselves, Faith said. So maybe our interests aren't as aligned as you think they are. Michael sat back in his chair. And for the first time since the interview started, he looked genuinely frustrated. Not angry, but frustrated in a way that showed this was getting to him. You know what, Faith? You're right. Our interests aren't aligned. Your interest seems to be making sure everyone knows how much you hate being here. My interest is trying to salvage what's left of the segment. So, where do we go from here? Faith crossed her arms. Maybe we don't go anywhere. Maybe this is exactly what needed to happen. Maybe people need to see that these polished, perfect morning show interviews aren't always real. Real? Michael's voice rose again. You want to talk about real? Real is me getting up at 4 in the morning to be here. Real is preparing for interviews, doing research on guests, trying to make everyone comfortable. Real is the hundreds of people behind these cameras who work incredibly hard to make this show happen. And you're sitting here acting like we're all part of some conspiracy against you. I never said conspiracy. Faith shot back. I said machine.
And it is a machine, Michael.
You can't deny that. Everything is scripted, timed, calculated to the second. Where's the real in that? The real is in the effort, Michael said firmly. The real is in showing up and doing your best, even when things get difficult. The real is treating people with respect, even when you're having a bad day. And right now, Faith, you're not doing any of that. Faith uncrossed her arms and leaned forward, matching his energy. Don't talk to me about respect when this entire industry is built on disrespecting boundaries. Every interview I do, someone wants to know about my marriage, my family, my personal struggles. They want me to cry on camera so they can get their moment. They want me to share trauma so they can package it and sell it. That's not respect.
I didn't ask you about any of that.
Michael said, his voice controlled but intense. I asked you about your music. That's it. You're the one who escalated this into something else. Because the music question was a gateway. Faith insisted. It always is. You ask about the music. I open up a little, then you push further. Ask something more personal. And before I know it, I've said something I didn't want to say, and it's out there forever. Michael shook his head. You're making assumptions about what I was going to do based on what other people have done. That's not fair to me. Fair? Faith let out another one of those humorless laughs. Nothing about this is fair, Michael. You sit in that chair, comfortable, protected by the format and the network and your status. I'm the one who has to walk the tightrope, making sure I say enough to be interesting, but not so much that it gets twisted into something I didn't mean. You think I'm comfortable right now? Michael asked, gesturing around the set. You think this is easy for me? Having a guest attack me on live television for doing my job? I'm trying to stay professional here, but you're making it really hard. Good, Faith said, and there was steel in her voice. Maybe it should be hard. Maybe we all got too comfortable with how these things work and someone needed to say something. Michael stared at her for a long moment, then turned to look directly at the camera. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the weather and some cooking segments. Thank you for watching. He turned back to Faith as the producers called for commercial. You need to leave.
What?
Faith's confidence wavered for just a second. You heard me, Michael said, pulling off his microphone. This segment is over. You came here to promote your album, but all you've done is attack me and this show. So we're done. You can go. You're kicking me off? Faith asked. And now there was something like disbelief in her voice. I'm ending an interview that stopped being productive about 10 minutes ago. Michael replied. You clearly don't want to be here. I'm giving you what you want. Faith stood up slowly, removing her own microphone pack. You know what?
Fine.
I'd rather leave than keep playing this game anyway. It's not a game, Michael said one more time, his voice quieter now but no less firm. It never was. But you were so convinced that everyone was out to get you that you couldn't see that some of us were actually trying to help. Help? Faith's voice was sharp. How were you helping by pushing me to talk about things I didn't want to discuss? Asked you about your music, Michael said, standing up now, too. So they were face to face. One question about your music. Everything else. All of this came from you. You brought the fight into this room, Faith. Not me. The two of them stood there, the crew still frozen around them, the cameras off, but the tension still thick enough to cut. Faith's publicist appeared from the side of the set, looking panicked, trying to usher her client away. Faith held up a hand to stop her. You really don't get it, Faith said to Michael, her voice lower now, but still carrying that edge. You really think I'm the problem here? I think you came in here looking for a fight, Michael replied. And you got one. I hope it was worth it. Faith opened her mouth to respond, then seemed to think better of it. She turned and walked off the set, her publicist scrambling after her. Michael watched her go, then sat back down heavily in his chair. His co-hosts were silent, unsure what to say or do. A producer came over, speaking quietly to Michael, probably about how they were going to handle the rest of the show. Michael nodded at whatever the producer said, then looked at the camera that was still off. He ran a hand over his face, took a deep breath, and seemed to reset himself. By the time they came back from commercial, his smile was back in place, his professional demeanor restored. But anyone watching could tell that something had shifted. The easy, breezy energy that usually defined his interviews had been replaced with something more careful, more guarded. The show continued, moving through its remaining segments with practice efficiency. The weather was discussed, recipes were demonstrated, other guests appeared and had perfectly pleasant conversations. But the Faith Hill segment hung over everything like a cloud. Social media was already exploding with clips and reactions, people taking sides, debating who was right and who was wrong. Some viewers defended Faith, saying she was standing up against media intrusion and setting boundaries that more celebrities should set. Others sided with Michael, arguing that he'd been nothing but professional and that Faith had been unnecessarily hostile from the start. The debate raged online, with everyone having an opinion about what they'd witnessed. But both Faith and Michael had moved on with their days, each processing what had happened in their own way, each convinced that they'd been in the right, each carrying the weight of an interview that had gone so spectacularly wrong that it would be talked about for weeks to come. The machine kept turning just like it always did. The promotional cycle continued. The show went on. But that morning, for those uncomfortable minutes, the carefully constructed facade of morning television had cracked wide open. And everyone watching had seen something raw and real, even if they couldn't quite agree on what it meant. So, what do you think really happened here? Was Faith Hill justified in pushing back against the interview format, or did she take things too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe because we'll be breaking down more moments like this one. What do you think Michael Strahan could have done differently to prevent this situation from escalating?